Okay, so you are eyeing yet again an international platform as a COP conference, so to speak. But you also spoke earlier about the issue of the recurring flooding that we experience here in this part of the world, in Nigeria, I should say. So what homegrown solutions, what individual approaches, would you proffer uh, as a way to end this recurring problem that we have on our hands? What are your thoughts basically on this problem?
So first of all, one of the main reasons why it's great to go to meetings like this to have this conversation is because there's no point reinventing the wheel. The wheel already exists. How do we adapt this wheel to fit in with our peculiar, environment? Let's listen to, panel discussions that will be had on that day, are listening to persons from other parts of the world to see how they've been able to we won't say solve, because nobody's, totally solved any of these problems, but how have they been able to mitigate? What initiatives, programs are being put in place to do this? And then, Nigerians need to understand before the floods come, before the rains come. So let's look at preventative measures before these things come, because we know they're going to come. We know that weather patterns are changing. We know flooding is increasing. So before it comes, what do we do? How do we speak to our civil engineers to ensure that the drainage systems in certain areas are adapting with the times? Because, of course, we have some areas that have great drainage systems, and some of these things, have been well thought out before any work commences. But times are changing. The erosion and the flooding is increasing. So we need increasing measures as well. We need increasing technologies as well. So how do we, learn from some of these technologies that are being shared globally and, bring them home to Nigeria and adapt what we currently have to, the best global best practices or practices that are peculiar to our environment. That's number one. And then number two is, how do we get persons to go out into the communities that are worst affected by some of these issues? How do we get them to go out there and educate them on what they can do, and as well as provide them with some of the solutions? So we know the rains will come by a certain month, and we know that these are the certain things that can be put in place for these communities. And it's for the individuals to take, charge of these things, because you also know that you have some of these initiatives put together by CSOs or private sector, companies, that they go into these communities to try to help, to try to put in some form of relief for these communities. And you have the communities themselves rejecting these interventions. So, this rejection is because they don't know how these things can help them, and they don't know the long-term effects that some of these climate change issues will have on their communities. Sometimes even wiping out, total communities completely. So it's very important that we create this awareness, and we ensure that the awareness is distilled in the language that these communities understand. There's no point in us having elitist policies and initiatives that don't go right down to the grassroots, because, as we've said, they are some of the people that are most affected by some of these issues.
But there are those who would say there's a limit to which individuals can go, or individual solutions can go. There's the need to put pressure on government to do what is necessary as it is right now. But let me quickly touch this report as we inch closer to wrapping up this conversation. A report put out by UNICEF saying that 110 million Nigerian children at risk and more vulnerable, having been confronted with the harsh realities of rising temperature, flooding, drought, and severe storms, talking about climate change. And it's saying that this development is making it second most vulnerable situation worldwide in terms of exposure of children to climate change. How do you react to this?
Of course, we as a collective, as communities, need to come together and assist the government in the type of policies that are peculiar to different environments. I don't think it's a one-size-fits-all for the whole country. So I feel every community needs to have some form of two-way conversation with the government and input in formulating some of these policies. Policies should not be created in isolation. They shouldn't be created without the voices of the people that actually live in these communities and are affected by most of these things. So I feel, yes, it's time to continue to, I don't know if we say compel or encourage or work with the government to ensure that these policies are put in place and ensure that these policies are not just drawn up, but also implemented. So how do we implement some of these policies? So government, yes, create the enabling environment, draft up the policies, and then private sector and the CSO sector as well work with the government on implementation of these policies. But let there be two-way communication. Let's hear from the communities. Let's understand what are the issues peculiar to individual environments. Some environments are facing drought, while some environments are facing, flood. So we need to know exactly what different communities need, what different environments need, and put together things that work for them.